Hello, and thank you for pushing play and joining us in our little corner of the online universe. Welcome to State of the Arts, a podcast which is supported by Fish Erin, Screen Ireland, through the Screen Stakeholders Funding Scheme. I'm Des Doyle, a writer, director, and creative consultant with more than 25 years' experience in the worlds of film and TV production, and I will be your host as every 2 weeks we bring you a new episode which will focus on someone who's been extremely successful in their chosen medium and will be both a look at their creative careers and current upcoming projects, as well as their take on some of the major news stories currently having an impact in their field of artistry. There will be 6 episodes in season 1 of the pod, and if you would like us to do more than that, then please add us to your playlists. Follow us on our Instagram at SOTAPod, that's SOTAPOD, and help us spread the word about the show. And of course, please let us know what you like and what you might like us to change as we go along. Today's guest on State of the Arts is Neasa Hardiman, a BAFTA-winning executive producer, director, and writer who has worked across the world on high-budget prestige global content. Neasa began her career with a PhD in film theory from Trinity College Dublin after winning a double first and a scholarship to the Universität der Künste Berlin. Her strong cinematic sensibility quickly led her to international prominence as a sought-after director, making emotionally powerful and visually stunning work, reaching audiences across the world. Neasa was awarded an IFTA in 2016 and a BAFTA in 2010 and in 2017, amongst other prizes. Her feature film Sea Fever premiered in the Discovery Strand on the opening night of TIFF 2019. A fluent English, German, Irish, and French speaker, Neasa is a voting member of the DGA, the WGA, and BAFTA. She is closely engaged with emerging technologies, exploring the implications and opportunities of generative AI for future content creation and disruptive business models. She sits on the board of Ireland's national broadcaster RTE, as well as on the board of Ireland's most prestigious university, Trinity College Dublin. On today's episode of State of the Arts, we're delighted to be joined by Neasa Hardiman. It's a delight to have you on. Huge fan of your work for a long time. I'm just wondering if we might start with, just because of the time we're recording this is very much in the news, the tragic passing of Rob Reiner, actor, writer, director, and his wife Michelle, under rather tragic circumstances. As a writer-director yourself, and because the whole industry seems to be feeling it at the moment, what are your thoughts on that, and were any of his films kind of an inspiration for you, or personal favorites of your own along the way?
It's so tragic, isn't it? I think everybody must be in shock on hearing the news. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And he was clearly such a charismatic man, and they were clearly such an open-hearted and warm couple. And what an incredible career as a filmmaker. Right from the get-go. I think his first film was 74, 75, something like that. It was an astounding career. And the breadth of the work that he made is extraordinary. I mean, I'm sure anybody who's interested in film will remember the first time they saw Stand By Me, which is
For sure.
such an emotive and tender piece of work with a glowing River Phoenix at the center of it. The Princess Bride is as fresh today as the day it was made. The tone of it is just gorgeous. When Harry Met Sally, I mean, just skipping through different tones and moods and different kinds of humor before diving into the depths of Stephen King with Misery. And then, was it Aaron Sorkin's first big screenplay, A Few Good Men?
I think it may well have been, yeah.
And that's obviously another incredible contribution to the canon, followed by Aaron Sorkin's next screenplay, The American President, and that, Rob Reiner's own politics and approach to power and how power might be handled are so evident in those films.
Rather different than what we find going on in the world today, right?
You have your own views, I have mine.
No,
Yeah,
fair
an
enough.
extraordinary filmmaker, and such a warm presence as an actor on screen as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the Reiner family and everyone who worked with him, who seems to have been very touched by what's happened. Now, going on to what we're here talking about today, I'm very curious, was there a particular film or TV show or piece of art that you came across in your childhood that kind of started your interest in the visual arts at that point of time? Something that would have maybe kind of stayed with you?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect not unlike yourself and a lot of filmmakers, I was the kind of kid that was fascinated by story. I read a lot and I loved drawing and I loved music and I was interested in technology and developing technology. It's like, well, what can we do? What are the options in terms of careers that allows us to bring all of this together? And filmmaking is the logical outcome of those things, isn't it? It's the kind of the modern Gesamtkunstwerk where you can make stories that use all those different aspects of cultural production, from technology to music to performance to storytelling. So it was kind of a natural fit, not that it looked like a natural outcome that I would get to be a director, but I was really interested in it. And then I remember going to see Neil Jordan, The Company of Wolves, when I was a kid, and that had a really big influence on me, because I'd say I was like a an adolescent, a young teenager, because I was reading Angela Carter, so I wasn't a child. But the idea that an Irish filmmaker had taken an Angela Carter story, and you know the way when you're that age, everything goes in really deep. Whatever you're reading goes in really deep, and whatever you see goes in really deep. And so I had sort of felt like, well, Angela Carter is mine because I'm reading her, so she belongs to me. And to have an Irish person take one of those stories that felt very intimate and personal to me at the time and make it into this oniric, extraordinary piece of cinema, I found that really affecting for a couple of reasons. I think at the time, we didn't have the advantages that we later had in public finance and the advent of the Irish Film Board. That only came later. He was stepping outside of the idiom in which a lot of Irish films had been made, which was making a virtue of their smaller budgets by means of social realism, dirty realism, and of course, a lot of Irish filmmakers were very interested in addressing the violence that was happening on the island of Ireland. And so, for a filmmaker to take on what seemed to me to be less immediate local national concerns and instead drill into something that was still very local and intimate and personal, but also universal, was thrilling. And the fact that he was using a kind of vocabulary that I associated with Mittel Europa, the more expressive, surrealist form of filmmaking that film sits in. I'd never seen an Irish film like that.
Yeah, I certainly can remember being incredibly struck by that movie as well, because like the visual palette of it was so different to anything that I was kind of used to seeing associated with an Irish filmmaker, especially at that kind of point in time. And it's funny, he hasn't really gone down that road to that extent again since, in terms of that kind of element of genre storytelling in the same way. I don't think, which I would love to see him do. Maybe, Interview the Vampire, I guess, a little bit, but the visual palette in Company of Wolves is just so unique. I find it a really fascinating movie.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Angela Carter in it. And obviously, I would argue that Neil Jordan's central concerns in his filmmaking are identity and sexuality, and that was what Angela Carter was kind of digging into at the time. And there's a lot of feminism woven into the weft of the storytelling. So I think that was exciting for me. And obviously, that was something that came from Angela Carter. It wasn't particularly something that Neil Jordan himself was interested in. So I think his later films are definitely about identity and sexuality, but from a slightly different perspective.
From there, you did a PhD in film theory at Trinity, right? Was the plan at an early stage always kind of, I want to be writer director, or was it just there was a general interest in film and the possibility of film, and getting to that as a job at the end of the day was something you figured out kind of along the way, or?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I'm very impressed by people who come out of the womb going, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or whatever it is. I mean, I think that must make life much easier. I think I was more kind of following what I was most excited about at any given moment. So when I had the opportunity to go to university, it was a choice between physics or German or visual art. And I kind of thought, okay, physics, I loved physics, really enjoyed it. But I felt like, well, it's quite a narrow discipline, which it was at the time. I don't believe that it is anymore. But at the time, the course is quite narrowly focused. German, I was already fluent in German, and I felt like, well, I know how to, I was a really nerdy kid. I know how to do kind of script analysis and all that stuff. But art is something that, I need to learn the skill of how to have interesting, unusual ideas. I need to learn the skills of conjuring something out of nothing. So I went into visual art, and in visual art, I was really interested in the moving image and in film. And there just there weren't really a lot of resources in Ireland to facilitate that. So I was lucky enough that after I did my primary degree, I won a scholarship to go and do a master's in what at the time was film sculpture. It was like film for a gallery setting. And I was taught by two really brilliant artist filmmakers, Valley Export and Rebecca Horn, both of whom were making films for gallery settings. So I was kind of getting into that world of let's make really visually arresting, interesting, strange imagery that will sustain for a couple of minutes. And out of that, then I started working as a designer, and I worked as a designer with RT and designed their corporate logo, which is still going today, 30 years later. I'm very proud to say. But after about 2 years of that, I felt like, no, it's not enough, right? Because that's only one half or one third of the process. Like, I'm making images and sound and trying to mobilize emotion, but there's no narrative here. I want the narrative. I want the depth. So it was out of that then that I decided to become a director and a writer. So I was kind of feeling my way into the disciplines, if you know what I mean, going, this is interesting, this is exciting, but it's not enough. I want to go over there as well.
I hope there's some royalty still coming in from the RT logo, but by the way,
Tragically, I was an innocent abroad, but no, it was a contribution to public service days.
no, fair enough. But with those first kind of moves into short film, because the short films were before the documentaries, right?
No, actually, it was
No,
the other way around. So it was I'm tragically, I don't come from inherited wealth, so I had to earn a living. So I've only ever worked in film and TV. I've never had another job outside of that, apart from like summer jobs, waitressing and stuff. So I needed to be earning a living and also developing my skills. That was kind of where I needed to be. And because it was Ireland, and at that time, I was the work that I was able to get was as a documentary producer and director. And I loved it. I loved it. It was an amazing, amazing trajectory and a great learning curve for me, because I think it's Hitchcock who says, when you make documentaries, God is the director. And then when you make dramas, the director is God. So it's really good to start out. I was making current affairs documentaries, proper investigative documentaries with Keelan Chanley. Those things are very intense and very focused, and you are collecting information and emotional material, and then you bring it all together and you watch every single frame of it, and then you work out what your story is. So it's sort of the opposite of drama, if you know what I mean. You're finding the spine of your story in the material that you've gathered. I mean, obviously you have your theme and you know what it is that you want to tell, but it's really the narrative will emerge like an emergent property from the material. So I learned a huge amount about story structure, about the three-act structure. I learned a huge amount about editing, about how to juxtapose images to create meaning, about how to keep the story moving and flowing in ways that are both coherent and unexpected. So for people starting out, I would absolutely recommend it. I think it's a really, really great way to learn. The other thing that I did was I did a lot of creative documentaries. So I did documentaries about writers and filmmakers and painters, and that was fascinating because you get such an insight into other people's creative practices when you do that.
I'm presuming all of that work as well would have given you a great deal of confidence then stepping in to actually do your first kind of short drama films as well, right?
I was certainly I knew how to be on set and I knew how to work with crews, that's for sure. I had directed Fair. I was the youngest director on Fair City. That was my very, very first drama commission. And that was instructive as well because I fell in love with actors. So after I did Fair City, I went away and I wrote and directed for theatre so that I could learn how to collaborate and join hands with actors, how to support them, what the best way is of engaging with actors, of eliciting the performances that you're looking for while giving them the freedom to deliver something exciting and unexpected. And that was wonderful. And actually, I did an Angela Carter story at that time as well, called "'Tis Pity She's a Whore." But out of that, then I thought, okay, I'm ready now. I have the expertise in terms of I know how to tell a story cinematically, and I have the expertise in terms of I know how to work with actors and get a good collaboration going there. So that was when then I made 3 short films. And again, for anybody listening who's interested in getting into the business, the first one was me and Orla Walsh were the first female filmmakers ever to be financed by Screen Ireland. It's not that long ago, weirdly. But anyway, I made a short film financed by Screen Ireland. And I think what I learned from that was I think I was a bit hidebound by the idea that there was a certain way that you're supposed to make drama. And I came out of that going, I feel like I need to just kick against things a little bit more. I need to be a little bit freer. So I made a second film that was more sort of Neil Jordan. It was more expressive and more experimental. And I thought, yeah, okay, no, I can push this further. And I made a third film on tiny money with people with a collaborator, a cinematographer that I knew from RTE that I really loved. And it was more playful. The camera was more playful and more kind of innovative, but the budget was tiny. It was a tiny budget. And that was the film that was selected for competition at the Berlinale. And it was the only Irish film in competition at the Berlinale that year. It was a short film. But that really put me on the map then. So it was a lesson to me going, oh, okay, yes, I understand. The more you take risks, the bigger the payoff. The more you take risks, the more interesting it is for other people.
That last film you're talking about is Olive, isn't that
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Which I just watched there recently because it's available to
Oh,
watch on your
really?
website, right? Yeah. And one of the things that struck me about it is the camera work is quite adventurous for the time period, but also the fact that the film is quite meta. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking, which was an unusual kind of thing to see in an Irish film from the time, right?
It was. It was an opportunity to try things, to do things that I wanted in my vocabulary as a filmmaker that I hadn't seen other people do, that I felt like, no, this is where I live. This is the kind of thing I want to do and be. So it was really liberating from that point of view.
I'm curious then, was it a combination of the short films and the documentaries that got interest from the UK to start off with, or were you kind of already knocking on the door of kind of agents and people over there at this point in time, or?
I was so innocent. I really thought I would have to have a lot more to garner the interest of a UK agent. And it was really friends in Dublin saying to me, don't be ridiculous. So I sent Olive over to a couple of UK agencies, and I was just very lucky. The first agency I contacted, I hit them at the right time, at the right bounce, and they took me on very kindly and introduced me to the scene in London and set up a whole load of meet and greet meetings, what they call general meetings, where you go and talk to people about who you are, and you're meeting producers and production companies, and they tell you what kind of thing they have in the works. And it's really like speed dating. You're meeting people to see, do we have an affinity? Do we have a connection? Is there an aesthetic that we share? That kind of thing. So it's you do, like I did a whole load of those before I won a commission in the UK.
That was Tracy Beaker, or was that the first one that you did, or?
Yeah, Tracy Beaker was yeah, that was a commission from, and it was absolutely that. It was a meet and greet with a British producer, and it was a few months later she was commissioned to make this reinvention, and she just rang me going, "Do you want to do this with me?" So that was really interesting. It was you know, she had the courage of her convictions and knew that we would get along, and then we set this thing up. And it was neither of us had ever done children's before. So it was very different from anything that had been done previously. And it was serious in its intention, but there was a lightness in the delivery. And we made these 6 kind of half-hour dramas about 6 different kids in care, but with a slightly elevated aesthetic because it was aimed at 8 to 15-year-olds. So we didn't go too dark, but we did deal with quite a lot of stuff. We dealt with bullying, with emergent sexuality, with coming out, with death of a parent, lots of things that kids deal with. And you know, as you and I know, having at one stage been children ourselves, the playground is volatile and political and violent, and we do children a terrible disservice when we deny them those feelings and that emotional depth. So we were trying to make sure that we honored and reflected children's emotional intelligence in the storytelling. And we were lucky enough then that it kind of broke through at a time that nobody else was really doing that, and we won a BAFTA.
Which is a fantastic place to start in terms of your first work in the UK, right? And interesting as well because like there's other directors I've spoken to who like would have tried to break through in the UK as well, and many of them have successfully, but they were like there were certain genres that they would have been wary of going into because they would have worried potentially about like being typecast or stuck in that. You know, was that a concern at all for you?
100%. It was a huge concern. It was a huge concern. And, you know, I had been lucky enough out of the Berlinale, an American agent had approached me. This is before we had got into peak TV. An American agent approached me saying, I could, young guy, I could represent you. You know, I'm building my coterie of directors. So I, of course, was very excited. Except that the next thing he said to me was, it would be to direct rom-coms and children's because you're a woman. So I had to back out of it then going, well, you know, that's not really my aesthetic. It's not really not there's nothing wrong with those genres. It's just that it's not my thing. It's not where I'm comfortable. It's not the kind of expression that I'm interested in pursuing. So I was very, very wary of doing children's drama after that because I could see that this is a long time ago. The industry has changed very radically in the interim. But at that time, there was a sort of expectation, clearly, as this guy expressed it very clearly, that, you know, there would be certain areas that women directors might prefer, which was, it might be true of other people, but it certainly wasn't true of me. So I wanted to avoid that, what I saw as a potential derailment.
Maybe that was an influence then, or a marker for because the next couple of UK dramas you did were all very much adult prime time UK drama. After that, culminating again with another BAFTA win then for Happy Valley. And I'm wondering if the success of that show in the US as well reopened that door and potentially then a look at that point in time for you in terms of maybe it's time to look back at the US as an option again, or
Quite right. It was an interesting and instructive experience. I really enjoyed Happy Valley. The writer is Sally Wainwright, who's an exceptional writer. She works harder than anyone else I know in the business. She's really hard worker and she works fast and efficiently and she redrafts all the time, all the time, all the time. She's thinking on her feet. She's redrafting. So I would give her notes and she would come back 48 hours later with everything integrated in really intelligent and thoughtful ways. She was excellent. And the producer is a woman called Nikki Schindler, who has more BAFTAs than I've had hot dinners. She's an extraordinary producer. So she's a really good script editor as well. So that was a very enjoyable experience. It was really great to be able to sink my teeth into something that, you know, Happy Valley, people talk about it as if it's grounded, realist, but it's very heightened. You know, Sally doesn't really write realism. She writes these really heightened dramas. And Happy Valley is a gothic drama in the style of Emily Bronte. You know, it's like you're living in this tiny little town and there are not one but two psychopaths. And the whole sensibility of the story is very gothic and very dark, but funny. And so I really responded to that. It's for good or ill. I think I'm a quite happy-go-lucky person, but my interest is definitely in the thriller end of storytelling. I'm really interested in the uncanny and unease and anxiety and that kind of producing that kind of emotion in the audience and then lifting them with a leavening of comedy or leavening of dry wit and a story of somebody finding a level of real heroism within themselves, not something, supernatural or something over the top, but something that is genuinely difficult to pull out of yourself. So that it offered me an opportunity to do that. And the lesson that I took from that is it's incredibly helpful to make something local that you feel is good, that you can stand over and say, this reflects the kind of work that I want to do. Because what I discovered from Happy Valley was Hollywood producers and financiers watch everything. They watch everything. They've got minions who go out and watch stuff for them and bring back the best. So when Happy Valley went out, I got a call from Christine Vachon, Killer Films in New York, to know would I like to make a drama about Zelda Fitzgerald in New York for Amazon. So I didn't even, it was a weird moment, and it was just the beginning of peak TV. So, in some ways it's difficult to learn from that because it just happened. I didn't have to solicit, but that was because I'd had this opportunity to make something that I was really proud of locally. And it's reassuring and heartening, I think, for us to know that if you are interested in making global projects or big budget projects, that those people are very interested in you. Those people are very interested in fresh voices, and they're interested in people from across the globe who have a perspective and something to say and a voice.
With that first US show, I'm wondering how much of a change in the experience of being a director on set was for you under the US system. Did you find the politics of it different? Did you find the on-set etiquette of it all different? Working with showrunners over there, what were kind of the first big takeaways for you from that first job in the US?
From that first job, the big takeaways were, oh, okay, I really understand now that this is a globalized industry. There were people in the crew from across the world. There were French people, German people, Dutch people, Spanish people, South American people, Canadian people. Everybody had come to this part of the world because they wanted to make great work. That was fascinating to me because we think of Hollywood as being very American. And actually, of course, it's not. It's built of people who come there because they want to make work. That was exciting. The speed and the excellence of the team was thrilling. The crews are bigger, so you're moving faster because there are people, there'll be two gaffers. There's the gaffer that you're working with right now, and there's the gaffer who's pre-lighting the next place that you're going to. So you and the DP have already briefed him, and then when you get to that next place, it's already lit and ready to go. So that's really exciting. There's less kind of hanging around. I worked with Christina Ricci, who was the star of that show. She was really interesting because already, she was in her 30s at that point, I think, and she had already had a massive career behind her. And the number of stories she had about film and TV was just compelling. That was before she did Yellow Jackets. But the way that there were some sex scenes in that drama, and the way that they handled the sex scenes was also really instructive. I really liked it. It was all written into Christina's contract. Exactly what shots I was going to shoot, exactly what of her body would be shown, for exactly which parts of the story in order to create what emotion. So it gave me a lot of confidence that I wasn't asking her to do anything that she hadn't really considered beforehand. And it gave her a lot of confidence that she knew exactly what was going to be asked of her. And I think for us in Europe, we've caught up a lot since then. That was 2017, 2016. We've caught up a lot since then, and the advent of intimacy coordinators has made things a lot less like the Wild West in Europe. But it was instructive to me at the time, going, this is very helpful. There's no shyness, there's no awkwardness. We just talk down through it really practically.
How did you find the relationship between director and showrunner in the US?
I think It's an interesting one. I think that the showrunner as an idea comes from I've done the showrunner course, the Jeff Melvoin course that the Writers Guild of America furnishes. So I've done that course and it's great and it's really interesting and Jeff's fantastic.
He's a legend.
He is a legend. He is a legend. I think he would be the first one to say the showrunner emerged from a different kind of drama setting. It emerged from those big monolithic series that ran 22 episodes per year, where you'd have writers and directors coming in and out serving the machine. And the showrunner was there because otherwise people would lose track of the long form stories. And that was very necessary. But I think with the advent of streaming, and that's kind of when I arrived into the US sector, it was a very different kind of storytelling. Like that first drama that I did with Christina Ricci was 6 episodes long, was 6 hours long. And I haven't really ever done any of those big monolithic dramas that run 22 eps per year. So my experience is that showrunners still exist on those shorter shows, but they don't really do the thing that they do on a 22 episode show. So on a 22 episode show, they are the voice of God. They are, telling you everything that you need to know because you're coming in and out. I take it. But on those shorter dramas, the director is much more important. The director is much more the creative driver of the show. So while there are still some people who like to refer to themselves as showrunners in those terms, it's much more of a collaboration. It's more cinematic. It's less pictures of people talking. It's more cinematic drama is what we're trying to get at.
After you did Z was the show with Christina Ricci, right? The next run of shows that you did, and there's quite a number of big shows in there in the US. The thing I find interesting about them is not just that like there's strong female characters at the front, in front of the camera on those shows, but there's almost always a female showrunner on the other side of the storytelling as well, from Melissa Rosenberg with Jessica Jones, Rael Tucker with The Power, Erica Lipez with We Were the Lucky Ones. Is that very deliberate and intentional on your part?
Not at all. Sheer accident. Not at all. And the last project I worked on in the US was Mark L. Smith, who wrote The Revenant, and very much focused on masculinity and masculine identity and what does it mean to be an outdoorsy man when you're suffering with grief and you have no language for it. So no, that was sheer accident that all those showrunners were female. I really, really loved Melissa Rosenberg. She's very clever. Jessica Jones, I said yes to it because I thought it was far and away the most interesting of those Marvel series at the time. She was a really great character. Kristen Ritter inhabited that character and committed herself to the role. And I thought it was dealing with genuinely very interesting themes that I had never seen on screen before. I thought the idea of telling a fairy tale about controlling behavior was just genius.
Obviously, a lot of genre work in there as well. Like, and when you went on to do your own first feature as a writer director with Sea Fever, it's a thriller, but there are strong genre elements in there as well as obviously very strong female characters in the forefront in that as well. So this is obviously something, an area of storytelling that you're quite interested in.
I think it goes back to the Company of Wolves, doesn't it? It's like, what is it that is fascinating about cinema? It mobilizes emotion. That's really exciting. It's a cliche to say, but it is also true. It's a form of dreaming. It's, when a film or a TV drama works really well, it's because it's found concrete metaphors that work to articulate some truthful emotion. In my case, in the stories that I like to tell, that may be quite difficult and hard to face. So I enjoy that kind of storytelling when it's really grounded and truthful. So it's a kind of storytelling where you have a situation that feels absolutely authentic. And like a pebble into a lake, you drop in this one what if element. And then you let the ripples take you into the story from there. So that's what I wanted to do with Sea Fever, was to say something truthful about this little community of people and then add this what if element that would work like a metaphor for, at the time I was thinking about climate change, but it also works for the pandemic, which is what it ended up being understood as a metaphor for, because it deals with this kind of central problem that we have culturally, which is, atomization and being an individual and every person for themselves versus joining hands together and working for the good of the community. And sometimes that might mean you're at a disadvantage. And how do you balance those things? Because both things are necessary for us all to survive. And we're herding animals. We live in little troops, and solitary confinement is deemed a punishment. Like we die when we're on our own. So we need each other, but at the same time, we need our own individual identity. So the film is really about that. And what do you do when you put somebody who's really not good at communicating emotionally into a world where communicating emotionally is absolutely essential?
And that would have been the first thing that you would have done in Ireland in quite a long period of time, right? At that point as well. So was that a bit of a treat to be back on home ground at that point, or?
It was just so much fun. That's where I met a cinematographer that I've worked with a good few times since, a guy called Rory O'Brien. His new film Eternity is in cinemas now.
Excellent movie.
Excellent movie, and he's a delight. So it was a pleasure getting to know him on Sea Fever, and it was lovely working at home. It was really nice working at home. I'm eager to do more of it. It was great.
Around the time in the run up to the release of Sea Fever, you very kindly took part in a panel that we did at Dublin Comic Con with some other Irish directors who had done some genre work in the past. But there was something you said on that day that really kind of stuck with me, and I was just maybe interested in picking up, if I could, with you now, where you were talking about the idea of not wanting to spend years writing and developing and making a feature film that would open for one weekend, get some nice reviews, and then disappear. And the importance of maybe trying to tell complicated, needed stories, but present them in a more commercial aspect that potentially makes them more appealing to a wider audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately there's good storytelling and there's not very good storytelling. So if we look at somebody like Tolstoy, he was a barnstorming storyteller, like a brilliant storyteller, telling stories about things that are difficult and complicated and uneasy making and strange, but telling them in a way that really resonated with people and still does, even though everything about the details of our lives has changed. We still get it. We still get it. And you could say the same about Shakespeare. The storytelling is just kick ass. And so that idea that you can make something truthful and difficult and still make it so that the audience can meet you halfway and understand and mobilize their emotion. And I feel, and there are people who disagree with me on this is my view, my responsibility as a screen storyteller, as a culture maker, is to meet the audience halfway and not to be deliberately obscurant, not to be deliberately trying to hide behind my skills and abilities in making images or in choosing soundscapes or whatever, but rather to use those things to amplify and clarify a narrative question that is difficult, that is complex, that doesn't have a clear moral or emotional or ethical answer. And I think that's my favorite kind of storytelling. And so, as you say, I'm not madly interested in making a film that's trying desperately to prove that I'm an intellectual. I have no insecurities about that. I'm pretty confident. So what I'm trying to do is to not just talk to people who already agree with me, but rather to reach across to people who maybe have never walked in the shoes of this particular protagonist, or never thought about walking in the shoes of this particular protagonist, or never thought that that particular protagonist was fully human in the way that that audience member is. There are plenty of us out there who are like that. And if you tell a good enough story that is honest enough and compelling enough and propulsive enough, people will invest without really noticing. that they're in the shoes of a Moroccan child or a disabled Canadian or whatever you're having yourself. If the story is propulsive and you're telling me something true, I will go with you.
I think that's quite important, well, especially at the moment that we kind of find ourselves in, because theatrical exhibition feels quite challenged on a number of fronts at this point in time. And for me, it's like you really need to be trying to make it as enticing as possible for an audience to move away from the screen at home and all the comforts of home viewing, to plonk down the extra money and go and watch something on a big screen. And as long as you make that an enjoyable and rewarding experience for them, they're far more likely to do it again. So yeah, I think it's a very significant kind of point to be kind of looking at the moment.
And you and I know there's something radically different about seeing a film with a whole load of other people in the dark. There's a ritualized aspect to it, and it changes the experience.
It does, absolutely. Like, there's a whole communal aspect to it, and I think this is also one of the unfortunate side effects of COVID, where everybody kind of, bunkered down for a very extended period of time, and some kind of things that we really enjoyed were have been lost a little bit along the way, and, like, slowly there's a regaining of footing, but it does feel like, in order to try and motivate an audience, because it's the difference between a passive audience and an active audience. Passive, you're sitting at home, turn on Netflix, and it's like, entertain me, right? Active, you're making a decision to go out there in the world and you're seeking one piece of entertainment for whatever reason that you're looking for it for. And sometimes I feel maybe not enough attention is paid to that at the point of view of writing or designing movies, and you're kind of going, who is the audience for this? Why does this work as a theatrical experience as opposed to a home viewing experience? And I think those questions are going to be pretty relevant, going forward from this point on.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right.
Coming more up to date with the most recent kind of released work of yours is Untamed, which was a massive hit for Netflix this year, and has already been renewed for a second season. I'm wondering how you got involved in that project, maybe to start off with, and then I'm curious if you found any differences from the director's point of view in working with Netflix today, as opposed to the previous work that you would have done for them a few years ago?
It's interesting, and a lot of those places have changed quite radically in the last 5 years. That's really true, and certainly Netflix has restructured quite significantly. With Untamed, I was in the lucky position where I'd got to know John Wells beforehand, and he had very kindly talked to me about doing Made, which was a great show. But I didn't do it because it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I thought I can't be so far away from home during the pandemic. But then he extremely kindly came back to me and asked me if I'd like to do Untamed. So of course I jumped at it. The writer is superb. The cast were excellent. The landscapes were outstanding. It was such an enjoyable experience. And apropos of that idea of showrunner, it was the opposite of that. It was very intimate, very connected, very collaborative, and very director driven.
It feels like it might have been, logistically quite a difficult show, just because there's so much location filming and
Oh
so many.
my God, you have no idea. We were climbing up the sides of mountains. We were sliding down the other sides of mountains. We were bitten to death. We had a grizzly bear come onto the set one day. We had, all sorts. It was hilarious and amazing. Such a privilege. It was just extraordinary. We filmed, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a waterfall that we shot the denouement at this waterfall.
The scene with Sam Neill and Eric.
Yeah, that's right. And I found this location. I was like, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing. And the line producer turned to me going, we've walked for 20 minutes to find this. You do realize there's no roads at all. But we had a really great designer who built us a kind of, because we were on rocks just over the waterfall. And so the insurance people were like, no, no, just no, no, you've got actors who are worth a lot of money. I don't care if you fall, but they might fall. So the designer very brilliantly built this kind of viewing platform that would keep the actors safe, so they didn't have to worry about, losing their footing and depriving the world of their brilliance. And then we just had to manage, okay, how do we get the gear up this forest path 20 minutes up the side of a mountain to get to this place? And I have to say, the crew were amazing. They were like, yeah, no, we can do that. We can just bring the gear. It might take a bit longer, but we can do it. But it was very tricky, and the actors had to come in on horseback.
Did you have to come in on horseback too?
I wish I was a good enough horse rider that I could have come in on horseback. I was keen. I could have done that. Had a whip and a bullhorn like a proper director. But sadly, no, I had to trudge the 20-minute walk.
Just because we know there are a lot of kind of directors and producers who listen to the podcast, I'm wondering if I could dig in a little bit maybe on just some of the specifics in relation to your work on Untamed, in terms of, say, how much prep time did you have for the episodes that you were doing on the show?
So I did the finale, which was a 2-hour finale. And it was, oh God, 34 day shoot. And I had 7 weeks of prep.
7 weeks of prep. Okay. 34 days shoot. How much time then were they allowing you for kind of director's edit on those episodes as well, or?
Really short, really short. That was the only problem. The American TV edit facility is still not great. So I had 10 days to edit each episode.
Wow.
So that was 10 days on the penultimate, and then 10. So it was 20-day edit for 2 hours, which is insane. So it's a problem. The Directors Guild of America is aware it's a problem. They're trying to fix it, but it has its roots in the way television used to be. So we are far ahead of the US in that respect, in that we have proper editing time.
How would you compare, or can you compare experiences between doing a show for Netflix, doing a show for Prime, doing a show for Hulu, Disney, in terms of input from execs or how productions are handled? Is there a very noticeable kind of difference in your experiences with each company, or?
It's very hard to say, really, because the way the Americans do it is they have the streamer, and then the streamer will hire a studio, and then the studio will hire me. So in this instance, the project had been developed by John Wells and Mark Smith. They brought it to Netflix. Netflix hired 20th Television, and then John Wells hired me, but it was running through 20th Television. So it can be a little bit complicated, because that means that every job is very different, because you're dealing with a couple of different companies. Overall, I found the Netflix executives on Untamed were very present in a good way. They were incredibly supportive, very positive, very engaged, easy, I would say supportive in a really major way. So that was really enjoyable. And I've kept in touch with those people since. They're lovely people.
Are you possibly going to go back for season 2, or have there been any talks or
And
mentions?
it depends, they have to, Mark has to write it first, and then it depends on where it's shot. So I think quite rightly, he's interested in the possibility of, depending on where it's shot, that it might be potentially people who are directors who are local to that area, if it is somewhere where there hasn't been a lot of opportunity. So we'll wait and see.
Because I think the original intention was, it was designed as a limited series to start off with, but because it became such a success, then it was like, okay, let's do more.
Quite right.
You were also recently back in Ireland, first time since Sea Fever, I think, working with Stuart Carlin on his new show, Tall Tales and Murder. I'm curious how that experience has been, and what are you noticing that's different potentially in terms of working in Ireland now, with your time on set and your time of working in actors here, and maybe the overall state of the industry here at the moment?
I think it's incredibly encouraging. The crew were outstanding. They were brilliant, talented, creative. The designer was brilliant. The camera operator was brilliant. The cinematographer was brilliant. Everybody was brilliant. So that was thrilling. The experience that Irish crews have, like the people that we were working with, all of whom were Irish people, had done these massive, great big dramas while we were filming. Our sound department was nominated for an Emmy for The White Lotus. Like, the crews here are really extraordinary, world class crews. And it was exhilarating, because having that level of expertise and skill set in combination with the shorthand that you have with other people who grew up in a culture like yours made it really fun.
Can you give us a tease for anything we can expect from the show? Or
It is nothing like anything you've ever seen before. It's a dark gothic thriller that is also hilarious. It's rooted very firmly in reality and also completely pushed and hysterically surreal.
that sounds pretty good to me. I'll look forward to that. Are you allowed to say anything or not about Day of the Jackal at this point in time?
I think Eddie Redmayne has a rifle pointed at me right this second. He's over in London, but nonetheless, his aim is exceptional. No, it's I've only just started, but I'm enjoying every minute. He's obviously an exceptional actor, very clever man, very able, really committed to the show. The writers are brilliant. The production team is excellent. I'm excited to get into it.
How many episodes are you doing for that, or are you 2?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Look forward to that as well. Just if we could maybe take a more kind of eagle eye view, maybe for a minute. I'm just curious, what does the world of the director kind of feel like for you in 2025 at this moment in time in terms of episodic television? Are you feeling any of the effects of the production slowdowns that have kind of started in the US and the UK? I mean, the UK has been very severely hit, especially on the crew. I think it's 74% unemployment there at the moment. It sounds like you're keeping as busy as ever, but I'm just wondering how you kind of feel maybe about the state of things at the moment, and potentially where you think we're going in 26 with it.
There definitely has been a palpable slowdown. I think the WGA put out statistics earlier this year saying streamers had commissioned 35% fewer dramas in 24-25 than they had in 23-24. That's extraordinary. That's a huge drop. I think everybody is feeling it for sure. I think there's been something of a resurgence this year. I think there was this slogan that crews were repeating, "Stay alive until 25" during last year, and I think it was the producer of The Handmaid's Tale who said, "Yeah, it's not going to be 25; it's going to be 26 or 27." And I think he was right about that. I think it does take a little bit longer for the industry to recover. That said, I think, as you pointed out earlier, the audience isn't going anywhere. People are eager for stories. And the wonderful thing that we have learned is that people are eager for really good stories. People have taste. They love really good stories and they respond and reward really good storytelling. So that's not going anywhere. There will always be a need for great stories and great storytellers. And, I'm lucky enough to have had a good authorial voice in the television that I make, but I'm also working on feature films, and I think for directors, it's like me, where you have to earn a living. It's a very useful kind of dyad because films can take a long time and they can fall apart at the last minute, and you can't feed your family unless you're fantastically successful already. Whereas if you're gaining experience and developing your storytelling skills, doing quality television that you think is good, it all cross fertilizes, it all feeds across one to the other. And for me, that's been a really satisfying and enlivening experience.
I think it's absolutely true that if you were just trying to make feature films in this day and age, that's a very difficult road to go down. So it's fantastic to be in the position, hard earned and through hard work, that you're in at the moment, where like you say, you can continue to be learning and honing your craft, and at the same time be developing longer form projects that you want to be doing. Just to follow up on potentially some of the challenges, I'm wondering what your take might be on the situation we find ourselves in now with the kind of ongoing conglomeration and mergers that we're facing, from the Paramount Skydance one that just happened to the fiasco of the Warner Brothers sale that's kind of going on at the moment. And then paralleling that with potentially the threat that generative AI might face on the industry at the same time. And I find it And I know you've done a lot of actual study into the whole world of AI and are very kind of tech savvy in this regard. I'm just curious, like things that baffle me at the moment, like are say Disney suing Google over copyright theft to try and protect their IP, while simultaneously making $1 billion deal with OpenAI licensing characters for their AI. So I'm very curious what your take might be.
On the combining of these already enormous corporations with one another into mega corporations, I'm not sure what that impact is going to have creatively on the sector. I mean, the rule of thumb is the more buyers there are, the greater the range of taste that's available to get things made. So whether that still pertains if the diversity of companies is all sucked into one mega company, I don't know. I guess time will tell. I mean, it doesn't sound like it would offer the same breadth and range that we might have seen heretofore. It's difficult to predict, I think, because the entire sector is still in such a state of flux economically and also creatively, along with technologically. We don't really know what's coming next. And what we do know is that we are in the forefront of the AI revolution. We're still not really seeing AI bite into our industry the way it will do, I think. But the thing about AI is, I use it a good bit across my work practices, but it's not, and I know a lot about it because, as you say, I went off and I did a qualification in it in order to be able to use it more effectively and to understand it because, there's a bit of automation anxiety in all of us, and you want to kind of get on top of it and get ahead of it and have a firm grip of what it is that you're facing, what you're using, and how best to use it. And coming out of that qualification and using the technologies myself, I feel like, okay, so what have we got here? We've got a system that works very well because it can imitate, and it works very well when what you want it to do is imitative, but it can't make randomized connections by it can't make lateral connections because it's by definition it doesn't do that. So, it's not really able to come up with story ideas or designs or anything that involves, the creative process. But it's very good at doing something like if I draw a dragon or a monster that nobody else has seen and I draw it in sufficient detail and I ask AI to reproduce that, it's very good at doing that. And it's certainly a lot faster at animating it than I would be. But that's not a creative skill. That's an iterative skill. So if we can be faster doing that, brilliant. That will allow filmmakers to design the most extraordinary things that they can and do it and animate those things at a much lower budget than they might have been able to before. And that seems to me to offer opportunities to open the gates of creativity in a greater way than we've been able to. And that seems to me to be, inarguably a good thing. But I think we need to understand that the relentless recombinative algorithms of which AI is made up cannot come up with something original. By definition, it cannot come up with something original. And so if you're sitting there and you've got a story problem, you say to AI, give me 20 solutions to this story problem, it'll do it, but they'll all be awful. Like they'll all be by definition cliche because they will be by definition something that the AI has absorbed from somewhere else, illegally probably, and then reproduced and repackaged for you. So, things like there was the Tilly Norwood thing in the news a couple of months
Yeah,
ago. Particle 6 is AI, what they were calling actress, but of course it's a piece of software. And it's AI writ large. It's like this piece of software can reproduce the figure of a person making what an AI system would consider to be an emotional response. But it's only ever going to be a terrible emotional response. Like, okay, so I'm working with Eddie Redmayne at the moment. So you go, Eddie, this is the scene, this is the situation, and he will produce something because he's a brilliant actor that is unexpected and truthful. And it comes from him and the lateral connections that his mind makes, which are different to the lateral connections that your mind makes or my mind makes. And we, as animals that live in troops, we're incredibly attuned to that. We know if somebody is acting or if they're giving us something truthful. So by its very nature, the software that is called Tilly Norwood cannot produce something that will mobilize emotion in me. It just isn't able to do that because it can never be unexpected. It can never offer something slightly mad, which is the thing that we always look for in our performances, in our actors. It's those slight weirdnesses and lateral connections and the little bit of chaos in everybody's mind. That's the thing that you go to the cinema for. That's the thing that you watch your TV screen for, is those moments of truth where you go, oh, you too. I feel like that too. And that's the thing that mobilizes our emotion. And it's as true of performances as it is of design, of writing, of directing, of music. All of those things are not at risk from AI because it is definitionally incapable of making what we consider to be good work.
If anybody is unsure of that, I would recommend them watch the Tilly Norwood audition tape that is currently up on Instagram. It's embarrassingly bad. And yeah, I would very much hope the future is humans using AI tools.
100%. It's the same as other, yeah, I really agree. There was this big hoo-ha when Photoshop came out when I was a girl, with people going, "Oh, it's the end of photography. It's the end of automation anxiety." It's a thing. And then as you move on, you go, "No, this is a tool." And the automated aspects of the tool are great. If you have taste and creative ability and you can harness the technology, you can get the tool to help you to articulate your creative ideas. And AI is no different.
Yeah, I suppose the only differential there, say, between Photoshop and what's going on right now is the LLMs have, created mass theft of copyrighted material to train on.
We're in the Wild West at the moment, aren't we? I mean,
Yeah,
that is the
absolutely.
thing. It's like Napster back in the day. These technologies emerge, they create a Wild West because legislation is always behind them, behind the curve. And I think, to be fair to the EU, it is working very, very hard to protect artists' rights. And we do need to do that. I mean, if we do want great art, I mean, that sounds really pompous. If we do want good stories, interesting film and TV, interesting novels, interesting pieces of music, then we have to invest in making sure that people can make a living by doing it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Just maybe a couple of quick short ones to finish up with. This may sound like a try question, but I ask it because I'm genuinely interested, and I think something comes out of it sometimes. What's the favorite episode you've directed across all the shows you've worked on?
Oh, that's interesting. When you're directing, the thing that happens to you is you give your heart and your mind to what it is that you're directing. And you have to, whether you've written it or you haven't written it, you have to absorb it into yourself so that every line of it rings true. And if it doesn't ring true, you've got to fix it until it does. Find a way to make it ring true, or last resort, alter the line so that it rings true. And when you do that, you fall in love with it. And it's kind of necessary to fall in love with the story in order to be able to tell it well, in order to care as much as you have to care, to work 18 hours a day to make sure you bring it to life in the most tender and muscular and propulsive and exciting way that you possibly can. So what I find is whenever I'm working on something, that's my favorite story ever. So at the moment, I love The Day of the Jackal. I love it.
That's a good answer. I like that answer. There's something that we do to finish up with everyone that we have on the show, which we call Creator's Choice. And basically, this is 10 different questions. They're assigned random numbers each time. We're going to do 2 or 3 with you, maybe. So if you give me a random number, it's a quick question just to try and get a sense of what your cultural diet might be like at this particular point in time, if you like. So if you can give me a number between 1 and 10.
7.
Whose Instagram feed gets your regular attention?
Oh God. Whose Instagram feed? I'm gonna have to look it up and see who's at the top. Whose Instagram feed gets my attention? New Yorker. That's very boring. Mia McKenna Bruce, because I worked with her before, and she's fantastic. Carrie Ann Moss is there because I love her.
Okay, no, those are all good choices. Another number.
3.
most recent movie seen at a cinema?
Sorry, baby. It's a first film by a woman called Eva Victor, and I went to see it because I met the producer. It was produced by Barry Jenkins. It's his film company.
Barry Jenkins' Moonlight.
Yeah, what I love about Barry Jenkins is he set up his own company and he finds beginning filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, and he gets underneath them and supports them. And he did this with Eva Victor, and she wrote, directed, and stars in this film, which sounds, like it's a terrible idea, but actually the film is beautiful. It's funny and it's sad and it's dark and it's hopeful. I recommend it.
Okay, I will add that to the watch list. Last number,
2.
2. Current song or album you have on blast?
I am so incredibly typical that I'm listening to do you say Rosalia or Rosalia? I'm not quite sure.
I think it's Rosalia, I think. My niece will kill me if I'm wrong.
It is. I know she's number one across the world. It's not incredibly kind of esoteric or anything, but God, it's fantastic. She's an extraordinary musician.
Do you have that played on set at the start of each morning to get you going?
I have it playing morning, noon, and night, blasting out on my 5-point digital stereo at home. It's so good.
Well, listen, it's been fantastic talking to you today. Thank you again so much for taking part in State of the Arts. And the very best of luck with season 2 of Day of the Jackal and with all future projects coming down the line as well. Thank you.
Well, right back at you, Des, and thank you so much. This is a brilliant podcast. I'm so delighted you're doing it.
Thank you. We'll cut that out and put that on a poster somewhere or something.
All right. Great to see you again. Take it easy.
Take it easy. Bye. Thanks for listening to State of the Arts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and that you will join us again for new episodes in the new year. Until then, we wish all our listeners a very happy Christmas, and please remember that art matters.